This happened on New Year's Eve back in 2001 when I was 8 years old. Since we're Muslim, we don't celebrate Christmas, so New Year's Eve was just like any other night for us. Our dad is a surgeon, and since he's Muslim, he always works on call at the hospital during the holiday season, so he wasn't home that evening. Technically, our mom was home, but to be blunt, she was struggling with addiction back then. Being an 8-year-old, I had no idea what addiction was. All I knew was that my mom was always passed out once it got dark and nearly impossible to wake up. My sister and I were downstairs watching television when we heard a knock at the door. Being the oldest, I went to see who it was. Our door had glass panels built into it, which made it easy to see who was on the other side. There was a man standing outside in a festive costume, holding a large bag. When he saw me, he smiled and waved at me to come to the door. I went near the door but did not open it, and I thought it was odd that someone dressed in such a costume would come to our house out of anyone's houses in the neighborhood. He said, "Hey kid, let me in. I have gifts for you." I remember telling him point blank that these kinds of characters are not real, and if they were, they don't give Muslim children presents. That's when he said, "Of course I'm real." In the past, I only used to visit Christian homes, but lately I felt bad that Muslim kids never get any presents. So this year I changed the rules so that you can get presents too. I didn't buy his story. Instead, I remember getting mad and arguing that we get presents during our own holidays. The smile fell from his face, and all his cheerful charm disappeared as he began demanding I open the door. I told my sister to call emergency services, and the guy seemed to run away. Unfortunately, the operator didn't understand what we were saying. Looking back, I think she may have thought we were just little kids excited about a holiday character. She told us that the number was for serious emergencies only before disconnecting the call. My sister and I got really scared because we didn't know who else to call. We were only 5 and 8 years old. The only numbers we knew how to dial were our home number and emergency services. Our dad didn't have a cell phone yet, and I had no idea what the hospital number was to reach him. With our mom impossible to wake up, we were essentially on our own. We hoped the man wouldn't come back. But a few minutes later, he was knocking on the door again. He said he knew emergency services weren't coming and that we should let him in or we would be in big trouble. My sister started crying and ran upstairs, trying to wake our mom, not knowing what else to do. I did the one thing that made sense to my 8-year-old brain. I grabbed some candles we keep for our religious celebrations and lit them all. Then I ran to where the smoke detector was and blew out all the candles quickly before tossing them near the detector. Thankfully, they gave off enough smoke to set off the smoke alarm. As an adult, I realized how dangerous this was. And fortunately, I did not accidentally set the house on fire. But at that time, all I knew was that the smoke alarm would instantly call for help and send assistance to our home. There was a fire station not even 2 minutes from our house, so they arrived pretty fast. My sister came downstairs, scared of the fire alarm, but I told her there was no fire and to stay inside with me. To my amazement, the man still did not leave. Instead, he ran to the firefighters, presumably telling them he was our father and had dressed up to surprise us. He claimed his costume did not have pockets to hold keys and that with the door locked, he could not get inside to save us from the fire. He begged the firefighters to break down the door, and surprisingly, they seemed to believe him. They were actually getting ready to break down the door and told us to stand back. But we started crying, shouting that he was not our father, that our dad was working at the hospital, and that we had no idea who this man was. The firefighter who was about to break down the door thankfully stopped and listened to us. He asked if we did not celebrate Christmas. I told him no because we are Muslim and showed him my traditional head covering and our religious decorations. I then broke down crying, explaining how I set off the smoke alarm to try and get help, because emergency services would not believe us. The firefighter thankfully believed me and then asked the man why he would show up at a Muslim home. I do not remember exactly what the man said, but the firefighters clearly did not believe him. Two of them wrestled the man to the ground while another called the police. They also asked what hospital my dad worked at so they could inform him about the situation. The police arrived and arrested the man. Another officer stayed with us until our dad came home and explained the situation to him. Our dad was furious with our mom for being unresponsive and essentially sleeping through the whole thing. But mostly he was grateful that we were okay. To this day, I think being Muslim saved my sister and me. Had we opened that door to let the stranger in, there is a good chance that would have been our final holiday season. When I was newly single after my 2-year relationship ended, I found myself back to the familiar yet frustrating world of online dating. Living alone again meant rediscovering the art of swiping, connecting, and navigating the complex landscape of modern romantic interactions. I had been single for a few months, and during that time, I had met several people through various dating platforms. Each interaction felt like a unique experiment in human connection, with most encounters fading into digital obscurity. One particular match caught my attention. Her name was Emma, and our initial conversation on a popular dating app seemed promising. She gave me her contact information, and we began exchanging messages. However, like many connections in the digital age, our communication quickly devolved into her passively watching my social media stories without much meaningful dialogue. This pattern was reminiscent of my college days, but now, being in my early 30s, the entire online dating experience felt markedly different. I work as a software engineer in a reputable tech company. On paper, my life looks successful. I earn a comfortable salary that allows me to live in a nice apartment and maintain a stable lifestyle. Yet the monotony of my professional life often weighs heavily on me. The job, while financially rewarding, can be mind-numbingly repetitive. Rows of code, endless meetings, and the constant pressure of deadlines create a sense of professional detachment that bleeds into my personal life. After my previous relationship ended, I initially relished the idea of privacy and solitude. The freedom to arrange my living space exactly as I wanted, to follow my own schedule without compromise, seemed appealing. But as weeks turned into months, the novelty of being alone began to wear thin. I started to realize that I might be more of a relationship-oriented person than I previously thought. The silence of my apartment became increasingly oppressive, driving me to constant digital interactions and desperate attempts to meet new people. Last December, during the height of the holiday season, I posted a casual story on my social media account. It was a mundane snapshot of my festive surroundings, nothing particularly remarkable. To my surprise, Emma, the girl I had barely spoken to in weeks, suddenly commented on the post. Her message was friendly, almost too eager, suggesting we might do something together to celebrate the season. I proposed several traditional holiday activities. My suggestions included visiting the local Christmas market, taking a leisurely walk through a neighborhood known for its elaborate holiday decorations, and perhaps enjoying a warm cup of artisan hot chocolate. Emma, however, had a different idea. She suggested something more intimate: decorating my Christmas tree together. The proposal caught me off guard, but in my state of loneliness, I found myself agreeing. My Christmas tree was a pre-lit artificial model, currently stored in the garage. I explained to Emma that setting it up was typically a two-person job, hoping she might see through my subtle attempt to gauge her interest. To my surprise, she enthusiastically offered to help. We agreed she would come over around 9 o'clock that evening. The preparation for her arrival was a whirlwind of nervous energy. I remember driving hastily to the local liquor store, selecting a couple of bottles of wine that I hoped would help ease any potential awkwardness. Upon returning home, I launched into a cleaning frenzy. Since my previous relationship ended, All household maintenance had fallen solely on my shoulders. I was continually amazed at how quickly a living space could descend into chaos without a consistent cleaning routine. As 9 o'clock approached, I strategically positioned myself on the couch. My goal was to appear casually relaxed, as if I hadn't spent the last hour meticulously preparing for this encounter. The living room was carefully arranged to create a cozy, inviting atmosphere. Soft lighting, strategically placed throw pillows, and a subtle background playlist completed the scene. When Emma arrived, the initial moments were surreal. She was significantly taller than I had anticipated. Standing at 5 feet 10 inches myself, she must have been at least 6 feet tall. Her presence was immediately commanding, almost overwhelming. The first thing I noticed was her perfume, an intense, almost suffocating scent that seemed designed to mask something else. We sat on the couch, and her proximity was striking. Our legs were practically touching, creating an atmosphere of unexpected intimacy. Something about her felt slightly off. She appeared older than her profile suggested, with a roughness that hadn't been evident in our digital conversations. Beneath the strong perfume, I detected a subtle, unsettling undertone that I couldn't quite place. The wine became our social lubricant. I poured 2 glasses, hoping the alcohol would help dissolve the building tension. Our toast was awkward, punctuated by an immediate mishap. She spilled a substantial amount of red wine on my light-colored couch. The stains spread quickly, a metaphorical representation of the evening's unexpected turn. I maintained my composure, rushing to prevent the wine from setting. Cleaning supplies in hand, I worked diligently while she continued apologizing. The incident created a palpable awkwardness that I desperately tried to dispel by suggesting we retrieve the Christmas tree from the garage. As we assembled the tree, holiday music playing softly in the background, I continued to pour wine. With each glass, the evening's strange dynamics seemed to blur. I felt increasingly lightheaded, which I attributed to my low alcohol tolerance. Little did I know, something more sinister was unfolding. While searching for ornaments in storage, I began to feel unusually dizzy. The sensation was different from typical intoxication, more profound, more disorienting. I managed to retrieve a box of childhood ornaments, each piece holding memories of past holidays. Upon returning to the living room, Emma had vanished. No note, no message, just an abrupt disappearance. I called her name, checked every room, but found nothing. My messages went unanswered. Her profile seemed to have evaporated into digital nothingness. What followed was a sequence of events that would forever alter my perception of online interactions. Collapsing onto the couch, my memory became fragmented. Darkness consumed me, and time seemed to distort. When I regained consciousness, the room was pitch black. My body felt weak, almost paralyzed. Using my phone's flashlight, I discovered Emma standing motionless before me, a tall, imposing silhouette that seemed more threatening than human. She moved suddenly, sprinting down the stairs with unnaturally heavy footsteps. A loud slam signaled her exit. In the aftermath, I discovered something deeply disturbing. All my medication bottles had vanished. Vitamins, supplements, prescription medications, gone. Even a bottle of vodka from my refrigerator had disappeared. The local authorities proved largely unhelpful. I provided them with the limited information I had about Emma, but without a full name or substantial evidence, their investigation was perfunctory at best. Reflecting on the encounter, a chilling theory began to form. Emma was likely not who she claimed to be. Her age, her intentions, her entire persona seemed constructed to facilitate something more calculated than a casual meetup. The most haunting memory remained that moment of awakening, her tall silhouette standing over me in the darkness, a tableau of violation and vulnerability. Needless to say, that Christmas tree remained undecorated, a silent witness to an encounter that defied explanation. It was February 2023. My boyfriend David and I were driving to the Cascade Mountains. We had rented a super cozy-looking cabin decked out with winter decorations. It was nicely located with a nice view, big property, and not far from a quiet little town to make things even more peaceful. There was a snowstorm coming that night, so we set out on the road a little earlier to allow us time to get groceries and everything set up. From the city to the mountains was about 5 hours. We made decent time. We stopped at a local grocery store for some snacks and essentials. Then we went straight to the cabin. We turned towards the uphill gravel road through a clearing in the trees that led to the property. The cabin was surrounded by dense forest. It had a big deck with a fire pit on it, which was very appealing, especially the idea of sitting near it during a snowstorm. There were a bunch of winter decorations on the property, including some solar-powered lanterns, a wooden snowman, and decorative pine cones lining the walkway to the front deck. We had to take a few trips to and from the car to bring everything inside. First impression, the place had a very comfy feeling, just as we expected from the pictures. It had a small Christmas tree in one corner, some warm blankets hung on the walls, and a bunch of smaller decorations scattered about. It had that welcoming smell of pine that you'd expect in a mountain cabin, though it was more of a regular house. I realized why there was a stack of logs next to a big stone fireplace in the living room. There were 3 bedrooms, though of course we only needed 1. We put our luggage in a second bedroom. I did the usual stuff like inspect the fridge, turn on the TV to see if there was cable or streaming, and look out all the windows. There was an upstairs that was more of a loft with a pool table and a couple of comfortable couches. Then there was a basement. For the hell of it, I went down to check it out. It was fairly big relative to the size of the house. It felt disconnected from the cabin, though. It wasn't furnished for hanging out in. It was dark and cold, and felt more like a space for storage or laundry. Then there was a knock at the front door. I hurried up to answer it, and there was a guy who looked to be in his late 50s. He was wearing gray work pants and a worn-out green jacket. He smiled at me and said, "How are you folks doing?" I replied good and asked if he was the cabin host. He said he helps manage the place. I asked for his name, and he said Jack. Jack said he lives just up the road if David and I needed anything. I thanked him, and then he walked away. I found it interesting that he knew I was with my boyfriend. David didn't come to the door, but maybe the property manager told him about us. I had a conversation with Eric, the host, about wanting to do something peaceful. It was pitch black out, and snow was falling softly. We cranked up the heat in the house and started preparing dinner. We bought chicken, vegetables, rice, and some bread. It was a simple meal. We ate on the couch with the small tree lights in the corner, giving the room a nice, comfy glow as we watched a winter documentary. After the movie, and when we felt we had digested enough, we went outside to the deck to sit near the fire pit. I turned on all the decorative lights around the front yard. As we sat there watching the snowfall, it felt like pure tranquility until something changed. The wind seemed to carry an unusual sound. David and I looked at one another. I asked if I should call out, but he suggested we stay quiet. Some distant sounds moved around the property until they were no longer audible. I told David it was probably a wild animal, but deep down, I knew those were human footsteps. After sitting outside, we went to take a shower before bed. The hot water in the shower didn't last for more than maybe 2 minutes. Something was wrong when the water turned ice cold. We screamed and jumped out of the shower. I messaged Eric, the host, about it. He responded within half an hour, saying that was odd, and he would send someone to check the water heater the next day. We went to sleep after our half shower. In the middle of the night, we awoke to very aggressive bangs on the front door of the cabin. David was shaking me, terrified. I said I would check who it was, but he demanded I stay in bed and not make a sound. Honestly, I was glad he said that. No part of me wanted to know who was at the door in the middle of the night. I think there were 3 sets of really loud and angry-sounding bangs before they stopped. We sat upright for a few minutes in silence, whispering to each other. I went over to lock the bedroom door for added security. Minutes dragged along, but ultimately, after about half an hour of sitting wide awake, we eventually drifted back to sleep. First thing in the morning, I messaged Eric again about the knocks at the door. He answered quickly, seeming pretty confused. He basically said how strange that was and didn't know why anyone would be roaming around late at night. He suggested that if anything like that happens again, we should alert the authorities. There was a lot of snow outside, and it was a dark, cloudy day with soft snow flurries falling. I went out to wipe the snow off our vehicle and noticed footsteps in the snow that looped around the cabin. I remembered the knocks from the night before and wondered if it was from the same person. These footprints looked fresh, and it had snowed all night. I heard footsteps approaching and saw Jack walking from around our vehicle. I told him about the water heater problem and that Eric said they were sending someone to take a look. He said he knew and was here to check it. I also told him about the knocks at the door and showed him the footprints. He looked at them and said, "There are a lot of strange people around here who go snooping at night." When I asked if we should avoid being outside at night, he casually said no, that it shouldn't be a problem. Jack went inside the house and walked around before going down to the basement. He said he would check the water heater. Jack seemed like a weird guy. I messaged Eric saying Jack was here checking the water heater. Eric replied, asking if Jack was the name of the plumber. I said no, he claimed to be helping manage the property. Eric's response made my blood run cold. He said he didn't have anyone named Jack working with him. I quickly told David we needed to leave immediately. We packed our bags quietly and brought everything to the car in one trip. As we started the vehicle, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Jack quickly approaching our car. I put the car in drive and left as fast as possible. On the road, we called Eric and explained everything, urging him to contact the police. He called back 20 minutes later, saying the police had arrived at the cabin but found no one there. What disturbs me most is that this man was watching us the entire time, from the moment we arrived to when we were outside. He was probably the one banging on the front door in the middle of the night. We still don't know what his real intentions were, but we're grateful we left when we did.